Part 3. According to Wikipedia under Trans-Saharan Trade. Quote, Trans-Saharan trade requires travel across the Sahara, north and south, to reach sub-Saharan Africa from the northern African coast, Europe, and to the Levant. While existing from prehistoric times, the peak of trade extended from the 8th century until the early 17th century. Listen up and proceed. The Sahara once had a very different environment. In Libya and Algeria, from at least 7000 BC, there was pastoralism, the herding of sheep, goat, large settlements, and pottery. Cattle were introduced to Central Sahara from 4000 to 35,000 BC. Remarkable rock paintings dating 3500 to 2500 BC in places which are currently very dry portray vegetation and animal presence rather different from modern expectations. Stop. Bingo. Again. Hopefully you will start to see a pattern in history that attests something CERN-like happened less than 800 years ago. But little Miss Ivy wants to up the game and believe history will attest the exact same thing has happened at least 3 times in history already. Each overlapping history, destroying the evidence and replacing the inhabitants. Mind you now, with each dispensation, a different specialized clone factory opens up for business in a different part of the world, just as the open one closes down to retool. As we will soon read, India was a specialized cloning factory. China was a specialized cloning factory. Lower Europe was a specialized cloning factory. The top of the earth was a specialized cloning factory. And Africa was a specialized cloning factory, each with their own dispensation coordinated to produce and disperse their product upon the earth at just the right time. Mind you now, as we will see through examples like the Barbary slave trade, even though the hapless Bantu Africans were less than walking distance away, the Barbary pirates could not touch them before their time and had to go on the high seas to raid European replacement settlements over thousands of miles away. And it is my theory the Psalms 83 game plan had a twofold dispensation outcome. In this case to me, Uncle Joel chapter 3 verse 6 is also a part of the Psalms 83 plan, which can only mean they already knew this slave factory, delivery system, and CERN-like device to hide history was in play before they made such an auspicious deal. What? Fibber? At least it's better than you calling me a liar. Turn to Psalms 83, verse 3 through 4 in the Septuagint, and I will show you. Quote, against thy people they have craftily imagined a device, and have taken counsel against thy saints. They have said, this is what they said, come and let us utterly destroy them out of the nation, and let the name of Israel be remembered no more at all. Example, bingo. Even though most people are mistaken on the first part, thinking it means to utterly destroy the entire nation, that part is in Joel 3. I want you to focus on the part of their pledge when it said, quote, and let the name of Israel be remembered no more at all. To me, that can only mean the device they craftily imagine is designed to somehow, in some way, erase the name of Israel so no one on earth will remember it at all. That's where our Joel chapter 3 verse 6 through 7 in the Septuagint comes into play. Check it out. Quote, and ye have sold the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem to the children of the Greeks, that ye may expel them from their coast. Therefore, behold, I will raise them up out of the place whither ye have sold them, and I will return your recompense on your own head. Example, bingo. So as you can clearly see, even though we were placed in Africa, they already knew our final destination was going to be far away from Africa. They sold us to the Europeans and used the African clone factory as cover. What I mean is, Little Miss Ivy believes she can prove through history and the scriptures their plans were to introduce us into the... Let me say it again. Little Miss Ivy believes she can prove through history and the scriptures their plans were to introduce us into the African slavery system via the weak-bodied G-men people deep into the interior no man's land of Africa to cut us off and keep us safekeeping to where no one, not even the mighty Roman Empire, will come look for us. When the dispensation was right, they implemented Joel chapter 3, verse 6 part into the equation. In this case to mean, specialized middleman went into the interior to round us up and brought us towards the outskirts of Africa to be sold to specific Europeans. And because Psalm 83 proves they took angelic counsel to make a pledge that naturally is impossible, wipe out our names from earth, they also knew about an upcoming CERN-like overlapping to destroy past history was on the horizon as well. Speaking of naturally, the more and more I think about it, it is impossible, and I repeat, it is impossible to naturally birth enough people to supply the vast number of slaves to the world and sustain themselves to have sex to produce children. I mean, it takes 9 months for a normal human to gestate, and years to mature enough to become either slaves themselves or procreate future slaves. So basically, the sheer number taken and the length of time of the trade itself proves beyond a shadow of a doubt the mass majority of the people upon the earth, and in particular for this video, the Central and Southern Africans, were manufactured. I also want you to start noticing the pattern of cattle introductions within our series. Cattle trading will be huge in detecting our clone nations. No, not sheep and goats, which have always been around, but the introduction of cattle upon the earth. I mean, how can you be a herdsman, agriculturalist, and run extensive trade routes all at the same darn time? Let's continue for more clues, shall we? Quote, to the east, 3 ancient routes connected the south to the Mediterranean. The herdsmen of the Fezans in Libya, known as the G-men, controlled these routes as early as 1500 BC. Let me say it again. The herdsmen of the Fezan in Libya, known as the G-men, controlled these routes as early as 1500 BC. Trade continued into Roman times, although there are classical references to direct travel from the Mediterranean to West Africa. Listen closely. Most of this trade was conducted through middlemen inhabiting the area and aware of passages through the drying lands. The Legio III Augusta subsequently secured these routes on behalf of Rome by the 1st century AD, safeguarding the southern border of the empire for 2.5 centuries. Stop! Bingo! So as you can clearly hear, even through my stumbling, Not even the mighty Roman Empire went into Africa whatsoever itself. They got everything, even all of their slaves, from middlemen on the outskirts of the slave routes. Now, what does that tell you about Central, Western, and Southern Africans? In fact, allow me to ask you a question, gentle strangers. Is Little Miss Ivy and I the only people who find it? Help me out, Little Miss Ivy. Excellent. Is Little Miss Ivy and I the only people who find it interesting? Not one slave report, not one slave or slavery route was on the western, central, or west southern interior or seacoast of Africa itself. Let me go that again. I wish I had an image. Pull up, go Google Saharan slave route or slave routes or trade routes in Africa, and you will see not one slave report, not one trade or slavery route was on the west central or west southern interior or seacoast of Africa. Anything below Nigeria is completely doggone barren. Not one settlement. Nobody went there. Even though it's just as close to the Americas as Nigeria, etc. Not the Europeans, Arabs, or Muslims. Heck, not even the Barbary pirates who were stationed in North Africa and sailed every sea there was in search for slaves. That's what it was. Not even they sailed a skipping stone throw away to raid the entire region of Central and Southern Western Africa. Why? I know why. Because everybody already knew that was an off-limit clone factory, Area 51.